Hey Bishops, Mike Frazier here. Thank you for joining me. Want to get you some tools right away here, even before our webinar, so you can start helping these couples as they come in. So this picture here, that's what we're going for, right? Strong marriage in the temple. People are, feeling connected and connected to each other, connected to God. That's what we want. So how are we going to get there? One of the big principles I wanted to get across was an important one, which is not to advise people or give people advice, but rather to challenge them. We saw this from President Monson recently, where he challenged us to read the Book of Mormon every day. He didn't say, "Hey, you guys, you got to be doing this. You should be doing this." A should kind of removes energy. You say you should do that, people kind of shrink away, feel kind of bad. Whereas you challenge them, that kind of brings up more energy for them. They want to do it. So the first challenge that we want to give people is to pray to see their spouse like God sees them. So, the wife comes in and says, "Oh man, my husband, he's doing this and this and just doesn't appreciate me, doesn't care about me." So you say, "Okay, time out. I want to give you a challenge. It's going to be hard, but it's going to make a big difference for you. I want to challenge you to pray to see your spouse like God sees them." So this is a picture of one of my sons, and he's got this cat here, and he's doing something kind of wrong here, but because he's my son, I can see it more as kind of cute, right? Someone who's trying. And if we can shift that perspective from where we're seeing our spouse as kind of this enemy that's attacking us to really a child of God that's trying, that shifts our perspective and that changes our behavior really more than anything else. Like Elder Packard said about the teaching correct doctrine changes behavior more than trying to change behavior. So that's what we're going for here, that shift in focus where they internalize that doctrine that, hey, my spouse, that's a child of God, someone that's worthy of love, that chose to come down here to this earth at this time, that is a noble spirit, being able to see them in that way. So and they might say, "Oh, well, you don't know my spouse, right? You don't know my husband." So with that, you can quote to them from Matthew 5:44, right? Okay, you see him as your enemy right now? Pray for them that despitefully use you. Pray for your enemies, right? That's what I want you to try this week. I'm going to give you some worksheets to work with that too, to help them really make that happen. Okay. So we can challenge them, but we're also going to want to give them some tools to make it a day-to-day thing. Okay. All right. So second challenge is going to be to stop criticizing. Now, again, this can be hard because they are probably in the habit of criticizing their spouse. What you want to show them is that it's not effective, it doesn't work. If it worked, all their criticism would have worked. It would have changed their spouse, but it hasn't, right? So a good parable you can tell them is Aesop's fable of the sun and the wind. So if you're not familiar, there's a guy that has this coat on, and the sun and the wind challenge each other. They say, "Hey, let's see who can get this guy's coat off." So the wind comes in, he's blowing this guy's coat. He's trying to blow his coat off as hard as he can. What's the guy's response? Grabs his coat harder, right? Holds on to it, won't let it go. Then the sun comes out, and the heat comes down, and the guy just takes the coat off all on his own, right? So it's like that with criticism. When you criticize your spouse, you're watching too much TV. You came home late again. They are not going to respond to that. They're going to get defensive, right? Defensiveness, that's the response to criticism. It's not, "Oh yeah, you're right. I am doing that. I better change." They're like, "Oh, well, I'm doing that. Well, you're doing something worse," right? That's the natural response. So you want to try to teach them that. And this parable is a good way to do that. So the next one is to start appreciating. So if you stop criticizing, a lot of times it's easier to substitute a habit for one that you're getting rid of. So if you're trying to get rid of, criticizing your spouse, you want to have something to fill that gap for where you used to criticize them. So you want to try to start really appreciating instead. That can be kind of tricky. I got this picture of a shirt here because my wife used this with me. So, I might not be the best dressed guy. I used to wear a lot of like baggy stuff, and I guess it wasn't that attractive to my wife. But so this one day she bought me a shirt, and I wore it one day, and it looked kind of like this in the picture. And she really was like, "Wow, that shirt looks really great on you, and you look really, really attractive." And so from that day on, I wanted to wear that shirt, right? Because I remembered that positive energy and that positive compliment that I got from her. And from that, it was easier for me to wear those other shirts. So appreciation, that's the sun, right? That's the sun part in the sun and the wind, where we're complimenting those things that we want to see from our spouse. So those are going to be the challenges that you can give people starting this week when they come in, right? So number one, praying to see your spouse as God sees them, seeing them as that child of God instead of that, enemy, right? Stop criticizing your spouse. Because why? Not because it's not true that they're doing a bunch of stuff that's annoying, but because it's not effective. It's blowing that wind and that person's holding on to that coat even harder. And instead to start appreciating, being more that sun instead of that wind, and showing that positive opposite. So in that, the positive opposite's another principle I wanted to get across, which is, so for the dressing, right? Instead of my wife saying, hey, like you're dressing like a slob, she found a time when I was dressing nicely and complimented that. So that was the positive opposite, meaning something that she wanted instead of the other thing, right? She didn't want me to dress well, so she complimented me, or sorry, she didn't want me to dress poorly, so instead she complimented me for dressing well. Okay. What I've also included for you guys is some worksheets for each of these. So like I said, you can challenge them to do this, but we want to give them some tools too. So you have a worksheet so they can pray to see their spouse as God sees them and note that they did that each day, and then start writing down, okay, how does this start changing me? To stop criticizing, there's a worksheet for that where they can just recognize, where am I really prone to criticize my spouse? And then to start appreciating, there's also a worksheet for that. Another thing that can help there is thinking back, hey, why did I really marry this person in the first place? And that can get you going to really start appreciating some of those things that you may have forgotten that you really like and love about your spouse. So I know it's going to be helpful for you guys. I'm excited to share more tools with you. Hopefully this will be a good start for you.